Live from Johannesburg, this is Tonight with Jane Dutton. Refugees fleeing trauma at home are being victimised by the very people who are supposed to be helping them. We look into the abuse by South African government officials against foreigners. A split in the Dutch Reformed Church over same-sex relationships. We get to the bottom of the issue. And the Princess Services respond to accusations that inmates are not being treated humanely at the country's super maximum prison. On Tonight with Jane Dutton. Tonight, the targeting of foreigners by government officials. They say it's rampant, and even police are accused of robbing them. Why is this happening, and who is supposed to protect some of our most vulnerable? Those are my questions for my panel. What's yours? Our phone lines are open. You can call us on 011 759 6340, or you can also tweet us on hashtag Tonight with Jane Dutton. But first, here's Shahan with the news.
Thanks, Jane. Appreciate it. These are our top stories tonight. Former President Jacob Zuma's son says he now will testify at the state capture inquiry. Dutton Zuma initially said he would not give evidence as he's facing criminal charges on a similar matter. He's been released on bail and is expected to appear in January next year again. In a letter read to the commission today, Zuma's attorney explains why he's changed his mind.
After affording our client an opportunity to consider the arguments of 6 September 2018, we have now received instructions from Mr. Dutton Zuma to inform the Commissioner that he is prepared and intends, it should read, to give evidence as a witness before the Commission with reference to the subject matter raised by Mr. Jonas in his evidence.
The ANC is distancing itself from an alleged plot to oust President Cyril Ramaphosa. The Sunday Times claims former President Jacob Zuma, ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule, and former Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo are part of the alleged plan. And NEC member Zizi Kodwa isn't making things any clearer. He says the people involved in the reported meeting would be best placed to explain.
People who were in the meeting, they can best explain or deny whether there was a meeting or not. That's a fundamental issue. What was the meeting about? How the meeting came about? Was it a coincidence? The ANC has no responsibility or obligation to explain a meeting which was not an ANC meeting. And I think that is very important.
So you're distancing the ANC from the meeting that took place with this former president?
We don't know if there was a meeting or not. That's the point we make. People who were in the meeting, themselves, they can confirm there was a meeting or no meeting.
And Finance Minister Leanne is warning the recession is threatening this year's tax revenues. Tax shortfalls in the past 2 years have been partly due to slower than projected economic growth. Leanne says tax avoidance will also increase. South Africa entered a technical recession last week after 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth. Leanne says government will be forced to borrow at the expense of service delivery if tax revenue declines any further.
If we were to pile on more debt onto our books, we would end up spending more money on debt service costs, which already have been the fastest growing expenditure item. This would crowd out our social expenditure, crowd out our investment, and any delays in stabilizing our finances will merely delay the pain for later, but also certainly ensure that the amount we have to take in the future is that much more.
Those are the headlines. It's back to Jane.
Thank you for that, Shahan. Refugees in South Africa say corrupt officials are making their lives hell. They accuse them of xenophobia and discrimination. Corruption Watch has received over 300 reports since 2012 from foreign nationals about extortion, threats and solicitation from government officials. Continuous appeals have been made to deal with maladministration and corruption at the department. In the studio, we have Corruption Watchers Leanne, Govindsamy and Prince Abenge from Africa Solidarity Network Africa. It's very good to have both of you with us. I mean, just horrific when you hear the stories and what's going on. Why?
Look, we have quite, recently noted how Parliament has taken note of this. I mean, we're in 2018, and the Portfolio Committee is outraged over what's happening at Marabastad. And we've written to them to say, look, this has been going on for the longest of times. In 2015, we tried to engage with the DHA. We know what has been going on. The things you're saying about the police operating outside the centres, about the abuse, about the requests for bribes, about it being so vested in terms of the interests that are at stake here. We have been raising it. We know what's going on.
So you say they're shocked, but I mean, how can it be a surprise? I mean, it's been going on for so long, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and we've made offers to try and assist. We've written an entire report, not only us. A year before that, Lawyers for Human Rights wrote a report called Q Here for Corruption. We wrote another report in 2015 where we invited the DHA to come to the launch of that report, where we said to them, we can help with the complaints handling mechanism. There are all these things that we could put in place to try and address this. And they didn't attend our launch. They didn't address our letters. In fact, we got a response from the previous DG, Mukiseli Apleni, to say, we're handling it ourselves, but thank you. And now we sit here almost 3 years later, and the problems haven't abated at all.
And Prince Abenge, your experience, what are you seeing on a daily basis?
You know, a refugee or an asylum seeker is somebody who is running away, looking for protection. And when they are ill-treated, can you imagine the trauma? When you go tomorrow at the Desmond Tutu Refugee Center, right in the vicinity of the Refugee Reception Center, you will find a lot of middlemen. And those people are almost known by officials. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones who are receiving the money and deliver the renewal, the permit. Okay,
so just stop for a minute. How does it work? So a refugee, a migrant would go to these centers looking for a work permit.
They won't get that service.
Right.
So they have to go through the middleman and pay something. Mm-hmm. While they already called the vulnerable migrant, but in the meantime, they want money from them. Where do they find that money? They don't have a decent employment. So you see, it's a very traumatic situation refugees and asylum seekers are going through.
And I assume that those working in the offices are complicit here because they must know that middleman is...
It's a network. They know each other with the middlemen around the refugee reception center. And they hide behind them. Those when they receive the money, they cash the money, or a refugee can deposit that money in a bank account, and it will go. It will definitely go to the officer in one way or another. You and I, we don't know.
Somebody was telling me the other day from Nigeria, picking up a family member who was stopped at the airport, and he tried to get $150 from him. So I know it's not just happening at refugee centers, it's happening at so many entry points, right? I mean, that's where the problem starts.
Look, we're seeing, right, you have a vulnerable group of people. What they're doing here is that they're seeking asylum in this country. They want their asylum applications to be processed efficiently and fairly, right? But because they're part of this corrupt system, as Prince explained, they're either having to pay bribes, maybe their documents are not valid, maybe their documents are not original. And so what you're seeing is also police officials, home affairs officials at other centers, at other kind of ports of entry, etc., asking them for bribes, targeting them, right? We have had so many reports where police are involved in harassing these vulnerable community members. They know, okay, there's particular areas where you'll find a lot of refugees, asylum seekers living or residing, and you go there, you ask them for their permit, maybe they don't have it, and now you're going to try and extort them for money. And so it's this cycle where their documents are not being processed properly, or maybe there are delays, or they have invalid documents, and then they become harassed by other apparatus of the state. And so they're constantly being asked to pay bribes in one form or the other. And the Portfolio Committee, for example, said they know that the police are operating outside Marabastad. When we spoke to the DHA about it, their response was, well, that's not our jurisdiction. It's immediately outside their offices, but it's not their jurisdiction. And we're saying to them, surely it's in your interest.
I mean, you want to say that, you know, that's the wrong answer, isn't it? Okay, we'll take it up, we'll put it forward, we'll put it to the correct department who's involved in this. something.
Exactly, because it's in the DHA's interest, because they're not just dealing with applications, right? You need to also protect the security of the country. And if you're saying you're doing that, surely you should be interested in maybe there being fake permits being printed, or there being this kind of middlemen that Prince is describing, because it's important for us to be able to offer a free and fair and efficient service. If people are applying and they don't qualify for asylum, then guide them in terms of what is the right process you should be following. Is it a work permit? What should you be doing? And that's a huge part of the problem, is lack of information in the languages that are understood by people who are coming to these centers as well.
So I guess it's easy because they are easy prey for those who want to make money off them.
Easy targets.
Easy targets.
Yes.
Probably have no recourse, or I'm sure it's offered, but hard to access if you don't have the information.
Now, what makes it worse is that somebody can have 15 years, and there are many cases like that, 15 years on an asylum seeker. So you are not a refugee, you're in the country, you are not in the system. How do you live? You don't have a right to a bank account, to healthcare facilities. How do you live? And South Africa has...
How do they live?
Yeah, South Africa has a non-encampment policy. So people don't go to refugee camps. They are urban refugees. So they have to work. And the migrant labor is almost criminalized as we are talking now. So how these people can live? So the rogue treatment, not only they are harassed at the refugee center, they're even beaten up by security guards. They've got shambles.
At the refugee centers?
Yes.
And for what reason?
No, because they didn't stand up well in the queue, or no, they didn't obey the instructions. So they're just alibis, you know, just to ill-treat people. And
well, I suppose if they realize that they can get away with it, if nobody's stopping them, then there's that bullying, which always happens, doesn't it, when you feel that you're stronger than a weak victim?
Absolutely, and this is critical. This is critical. What is happening is that people are in a desperate situation, and they are being taken advantage of. You have people that will work the whole month for a particular amount of money and use all that money to pay for their asylum seeker permit to be renewed, or whatever the case may be. And Jane, we're not saying that the Department of Home Affairs hasn't done anything. What we're saying is that the measures that they claim to have implemented, one, as civil society, we haven't had oversight over those measures. And
is that one of those that they claim to have?
That they claim to have. When we launched our report in 2015 and we said, can we assist you in resolving these issues? They said, no. We are implementing all these technological innovations at the center. We're going to improve the system. The system is going to be corruption-free because we're going to have interpreters in a different room. We're going to ensure that, certain technologies are used to prevent human interference. Right? And so we said to them, look, even if you do that, you're still going to have very vested interests here. The issues are not just at the center. It's these middlemen. It's happening in communities. Let us help you. We can help with the complaints handling mechanism. We can anonymize reports. We can work with you, work through our partners to bring information with you. You can engage with the security cluster. Let's try and resolve this. And they said no. And now, right, you see that these issues still continue. So we haven't had oversight in respect of the implementation of those measures, and we haven't been involved in, and we're seeing these issues continue, and they also just have refused to speak to us. And it's not just us, it's other civil society organizations as well.
Can I stop you there for a moment? We've got a caller from Johannesburg. Emmanuel, go ahead.
Thank you.
Hi, Emmanuel, what's your question?
Yeah, my name is Emmanuel. The question is, like, in Home Affairs, when we are going to extend our papers, you get there, when you are there, before you get on the line, there is a police who are not in uniform. And the other agencies, if you didn't pay, you cannot even get in the Home Affairs. You will see the people, they are coming, and then they put the person in front of you because he paid. And then those ones who are not paid, you can even be beaten outside of the gate. That is like what happened outside. And then they're going to let you go in around 11 or 1 when they are already finishing to help the other people. Then they will postpone. They say, no, it's fine. The people that are on run, come back next week.
And do you have to pay again next week?
And then when you go next week, then it can still happen. And then you can finish 3 months without renewing your paper because of that issue. And then when you are inside the yard, now you get a chance to get in the yard. You will see the official who have a connection with those middlemen. He will come on the stand, and then he call the person that he wants. He will come and call on the name. And then he called like 3, 4 people who are paid. Like on Monday, I'm from DRC. When you go there Monday and Tuesday, you will see they are helping Bangladesh because Bangladesh, they are paying. They have money, they leave the shop. They will tell you, if you don't have something, go home, we'll come next week. Or they will say there is no network. And then you go home. And then you can go there till 1 o'clock. They're helping the people from Bangladesh, the people from these people who have money, who come and pay.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, that's just confirming what you are saying. And I mean, that's just awful, isn't it? I mean, absolute exploitation there. And you have no choice but to keep going back and keep putting money into their pockets.
And, you know, people in that way, as Emmanuel has just mentioned, people are forced into illegality. You know, they postpone the first time, the renewal, the second time, the third time, you become an irregular immigrant. And I knew some experiences where somebody goes to the refugee reception office or center. They say, okay, your document has expired. They just look around, they find the police straight to a deportation center. But this person has been coming over and over.
So as you're saying, you're turning them into criminals and you're possibly pushing them towards, I don't know, criminal activities if you put them in that sort of vulnerable state. Let's bring in Michael from Dutton. Go ahead, Michael.
Hello, Jane. Yeah, my concern is that in our areas, like in Germiston, for instance, it's a hub where the criminals are working. You find them working, going around the place, and those who are queuing, waiting to be served, are not getting any services. And all what they are told, go outside and there's the number you can phone and that person will help you. My question is, how come Germiston in particular, where there is a hub of eco-ruling, our officials, our politicians are not aware of that, seeing that and doing nothing about it? Continuously, we are having this problem in our home affairs, where the queue are so long and people are being turned back every day, yet the politicians around there are doing nothing about it.
Okay, thank you for that, Michael. I mean, clearly the system is broken.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the key things to remember here is that we've seen it in other areas, right? If you don't have deterrence and you don't have visible deterrence, you're not going to stop this kind of conduct. I'm speaking on the side of the DHA officials. If officials are not charged and if they are not convicted and you don't have proper prosecution, you're not going to see this behavior stop. I mean, we've picked up instances where even you have convicted DHA officials still working at the DHA, and we've reported this. And we've asked
Obviously,
questions.
everyone's protecting everyone else if there are so many involved.
Absolutely, because the monetary value involved here is huge. When you have such vested interests, you know, how do you break up that system and how do you stop it from happening? And I mean, I must commend the Hawks officials that we've worked with, both here and in Cape Town, because, by the way, this is not just in Marabista. This is also taking place in Cape Town, because they have tried. And they've come back to us and said, look, this is a really complex, difficult issue for us to engage with. And one of the reasons it's complex is because they need witnesses, right? So refugees and asylum seekers to come forward and to be the witnesses and to participate in Section 205s or these entrapment processes. They're too scared. They're already in vulnerable positions. How do we somehow come up with innovative ways? How does the criminal justice system work with other departments to try and resolve this as opposed to following these archaic procedures?
Now, Corruption Watch did a few graphs, a bit of research into how this works. So if we can just bring it up on screen, and you can see the figures of where people are really targeted. So, I mean, 80% already straight there at the reception office, as you were saying, security guards, I mean, all those people that are supposed to be helping you, even interpreters. If you can slide the graph across, the data rather. 70% affected by the police, 74%. I mean, 74% involved with bribes. Move it along if you could. We've got one more, I believe, when it comes to corruption. Bribes, 75%. I mean, 95% threats and violence. That's the one that really stood out. I mean, that's appalling that they feel that they can be in a position where they can threaten people. What sort of impact do you think this has on the families? So, I don't know, would it normally be the man who's applying in these instances?
Yeah, you know, when a refugee, when a paper has expired, there is a FICA regulation that the bank account of that particular refugee must be frozen. And that's a breadwinner. And they cannot access the money they worked for. And the family has to starve. The kids has to stop going to school. So it is actually breaking families.
Not only, okay, we've got another caller. Mongezi from Johannesburg, go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to get clarity because when the program started, it seemed like the program was about the abuse that the refugees are getting. And what I'm getting from the program now is about corruption, of which all of us in South Africa are victims of. All right, so I would have liked that your panelists could delve more on the abuse that they are getting. I just heard when one person mentioned the Shambo King. If I can just hear more and just to get clarity, what abuse are they getting?
All right, thanks, Mongezi. Can you elaborate on that?
What did he say? I didn't follow.
The abuse. He wants to find out more about the abusive behavior towards these refugees. You were talking about some of them being...
Yeah, there is a rogue treatment, actually. So people are treated in an inhumane way at the refugee reception center. People are even being beaten up for not committing any wrong just because they were born in a different country. They are refugees. They are looking for asylum in the Republic of South Africa. So it is playing actually against the country because, you know, international laws have got precedence on national laws. And when a country is not abiding anymore with the international law, so there are very serious implications in terms of reputation itself of the country. You know, it can dwindle at the international scale. And, you know, the spillover of what's going on, maybe we cannot leave it today, even on Pan-African platforms. It will bounce back to the country because, you know, with social media and the technology progress, so everything is being broadcast. We are here. We don't know how many people are watching us.
You know, the vulnerable, you are not welcome. And if you come here, we'll beat you up or we'll steal from
you.
you.
It's very dangerous for the country. It's very dangerous for the reputation itself of the country. So I think it has to be corrected as soon as possible.
Let's hear what Jackie has to say from Cape Town. Go ahead, Jackie.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I am living in a country now since 2016, and I apply in since 2006, and 10 years after I apply for a PR since 2016, and my result, the outcome only came last week, and it was unsuccessful. Oh. Only to find out that the police clearance was fraudulent, which I can actually dispute because I did it myself. But the problem is the standing committee letter that I didn't personally get because I did it through one of the agencies. So I'm sitting here now with 10 days to appeal. I don't know how do I go about it.
All right, thanks for that, Jackie. What legal framework will support someone like Jackie?
Look, we have one particular partner in Cape Town, the Refugee Rights Unit, and they offer services to refugee and asylum seekers. In Johannesburg, you have, both in Pretoria and here, Lawyers for Human Rights, you know, and they assist refugees and asylum seekers to make these applications, to go through the appeal processes, etc. You know, and one of the problems that, or part of the problem that they've experienced is that some of these appeal processes don't work very well. So there's delays in administrative processes that are frustrating them. They have to resort to litigation.
Do you think the will is there?
We really don't think that there's a real political will to resolve this, and this is notwithstanding civil society really trying and trying to place pressure. You know, you see that there is a will to try and securitize our borders and to resolve the backlogs in the asylum process by resorting to deportations, and many of them unlawful, and we've seen that through our own experience. But there isn't a real will to say, how do we really strengthen and fix the system so that these applications are processed fairly? We're not saying everyone should be, you know, granted asylum. You should be granted asylum if, based on the facts of your application, you are in fact seeking asylum validly.
Because I should imagine if they know that they're not looked after, and I'm going to bring in, I believe we've got another caller. If they feel that they're not being looked after, then the man, the woman on the street will realize that they are, you know, working beneath the law, that they're not legal. I should imagine that has a knock-on effect in the xenophobia that we've been seeing in many of the townships, in Soweto, for example.
Yeah, it is actually like encouraging xenophobia, because these people are already vulnerable. These people are in a very implicit way thrown out of the country because their papers, their permits are not renewed. So the neighbor knows that. And some of them are running spaza shops in townships. What's going to be their fate? They're going to be attacked. Anyway, there will be alibis that they are selling expired product, but the same expired product are being looted and eaten somewhere. So, you know, it's...
But if South Africa is falling foul of international law, what can be done from the outside? Can there be external pressure to sort it out?
Look, we rely on organizations like UNHCR, for example, to liaise with the South African government and to hold them accountable to these to these laws and to their international obligations. There are various other UN mechanisms. But again, you know, I think like with any other UN mechanism, it's really about the country involved, the domestic kind of environment being amenable to that kind of criticism and saying, that's valid criticism, we're going to take it on and we're going to address this. We're not just going to ignore it. We're not going to undermine those processes in any way or try and subvert them. And that's really important. I mean, we've tried, you know, obviously South Africa is aware of the international obligations, but there has to be a real commitment to enforcing it. It can't just be that, you know, you must be somehow forced into enforcing them.
No. Well, let's hope it starts from today. Thank you very much, both of you, for talking to us, Leanne, Govindsamy, and Prince Abenge. Thank you. Should a church be able to decide who to leave out of its congregations? That story and more up next.